Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are going to try and continue along the path of talking about the Hilga Komarno Rebbe, Rav Yitzchak, Eizik, Yehuda, Yechiel, Safrin of Komarno, the Baal HaZohar Chai. And what we introduced was the first Yud, the first expression of the beginning of the Komarno Rebbe, to show where he was coming from, to show the depth of light that this tzaddik felt he was going to reveal and that he did reveal through each and every aspect of his life, specifically in the lower places, specifically in the concealment that he felt, specifically in the difficulty that he felt, specifically in the self-awareness of the concealment that the tzaddik falls into when they find themselves operating in a place devoid of the illuminating light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what we focused on was the emphasis placed upon the fact that for the Komarno Rebbe, as drawing forth from the lights of Zidichov and expressing itself downwards into the world of his children, we see that for the Komarno, it's in the darkness, it's in the concealment where a person feels most human, where a person goes all the way down, that they have to hold on to the innermost point of faith. By holding on to the innermost point of faith, by grabbing hold of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to me from that place, speaking to me from the Yisurin of Erev Shabbos, speaking to me from the struggles and the chayref and the difficulty and all of the remarkable languages that we saw from the Komarno Rebbe, when a person is able to be aware that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there with them, when a person is able to understand that Alufel Shal Olam B'chol Tenua V'Tenua, that the ascendant light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is found within each and every movement, each and every gesture that a person takes in this world, and everything that takes shape in this world. So then a person comes to understand that there is nothing devoid of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no moment so difficult that I can't find the Aleph there. There is no feeling so terrible that I cannot tap into the light of Emunah that burns at the core of all things. And the Komarno Rebbe spoke of that darkness that he experienced, spoke of that darkness that he descended down into. Not only to give us chizuk because, wow, a tzaddik like the Komarno Rebbe went down, so too people as low as us can go down also, even though that was a fundamental role of the tzaddik, to reveal the chizuk, to be machazik leiv hanishbar, to be machazik nishmas Yisrael, to know that there was a tzaddik who felt everything that we all feel, who felt the solitude, who felt the isolation, who felt the forlornness, who felt the sense of being chased and chasing something, who felt that misa that he felt 1,000 times over, that meriris that he chewed on 1,000 times over, from others, from the self, from his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chitzonius. The Komarno tells us that he was there and that it's okay, and that not only is it okay, but you can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu there. And that it's from within the choshech hakafel u'mechupel, within that double darkness, within that concealment of this worldliness, is where we're going to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we explained in the name of the Komarno Rebbe, in the language of the Nesiv HaEmunah, that this is the secret of tzaddik ba'emunaso yichya, that the tzaddik, the righteous individual, lives with his faith. And this is translating from Nesiv HaEmunah Oz Gimel. Somebody comes to believe in the divine governance of Hashem within each and every place that a person finds themselves, and that they're fundamentally aware that each and every moment and each and every second of their lives and every experience that a person goes through is directly from Hashem, and that the hashkacha, the divine governance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blessed be He, in His deep unity, is always revealing Himself not only above but in the lowest place as well, in that small place which is referred to as Adnus, which is referred to as Malchus, which is referred to as the lower place. Even there, the infinite light is shining, its singular unity. Even there, the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being cried out. The name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Malchus. And when we gaze and when we look at all of the difficulties and the issues that are going on in a person's life, and we come to find the inner reasons for it, and we come to realize that it's because I don't realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there right now. And I accept upon myself to draw down the light of Hashem, and I ask for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the master of the will, to reveal himself to me down here, to give me the strength to understand why it is that I'm struggling. In that point, I can come to the struggle and understand that it's there to bring me to a place of tshuva. And when a person feels the difficulty, and they awaken themselves to come back to God, to come back to an awareness of God, and they don't allow themselves to be stuck in the concealment of their minds any longer, so immediately a person has the ability of running all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Immediately we have the ability of grabbing hold of that deep light of David HaMelech. The Komarno is describing that all of the difficulty we experience is because we're koifer in David HaMelech. We deny the reality of David. What does it mean to deny the reality of David? So David, the Komarno says, the lower Dalid represents concealment, impoverishment, struggle. The Vav represents the connectivity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is perpetually shining down into our lives. And the upper Dalid represents the illuminated source of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's original light, the Malchus, the Ein Sof Kavyachol. And when we can take our lower Dalid experience, which is completely impoverished and empty in its externality, and we can come to find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is perpetually being drawn down into that place, and then we can uncover the ladder through which we can climb out of the stuckness and utilize the same stuckness to continue climbing up that vav till we come to the point of the upper dalid, which is the revelation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been there all along. And in that moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself. In that moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu suddenly shines light upon the darkness, and Yispardu Kol Peleyavan, all difficulty is gone. All difficulty is concealed, all concealment is removed, and there's a revelation of joy and gladness in that place. Now, what I want to talk about today, and as we attempt to speak of the second yud of the Komarno, the element of Yehuda, is talk about why this is. Was the Komarno Rebbe just giving us chizuk? Was the Komarno Rebbe just willing to go down to those low places in order to give chizuk to Nishmas Yisrael that would find themselves in those places themselves at the end of exile, and we needed to know that there was a tzaddik who was there also giving us chizuk? Or is there something deeper going on? And avada, there's something deeper going on. Because what the Komarno Rebbe is doing, more so than nearly any other tzaddik, and in this sense, the Komarno Rebbe becomes a foundation for Rav Yitzchak Shlita in drawing down a certain understanding of the sugya of ani and ayin b'vasachas. But nobody like the Komarno throughout all of his writings describes the nexus of Malchus and Keser. That for the Komarno, Malchus, which is where I am at, which is where the individual, when they open themselves up vulnerably, identifies as the Merkava for the Shechina, as the expression of Malchus itself. Every Yid is an expression of Malchus. Every neshama is an expression of Malchus. We all represent Malchus. The tzaddikim represent Malchus, and we represent Malchus, each and every one of us in our own way. Each and every one of us with our own grasp of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the role that we have to play as a vessel that reveals that light even more. That is our Malchus. And it's this Malchus that the Komarno Rebbe is picking up on when he's describing to us the Yisurin, the struggle, the personal struggle that the tzaddik experiences when it descends down into exile and concealment. Because when the tzaddik is capable of describing and giving words to that experience of the descent down into exile, they're not just talking about their autobiographical self. They're seeing within their autobiographical self the secret of Shchinta Ilah, the secret of Nishmas Yisrael, the secret of Malchuscha Malchus Kol Olamim. And if the Yid, if the Neshama, and what a tzaddik is made on themselves is also true for every person who comes to read the words of the tzaddikim and amich kulam tzaddikim. When the tzaddik comes to realize that my nefesh, my struggle, the place that I'm stuck in, is a reflection of the Shechina, so then in that moment, a person is joining together with the tsar of the Shechina itself and the personal suffering, the personal struggle, the personal encounter in exile, radically and momentarily becomes a reflection on the suffering and the struggle of exile that the Shechina itself is suffering. And in that moment, the individual in their lowly state becomes suddenly a Merkava to the Shechina. And if I'm a Merkava to the Shechina, then immediately I have this direct line to go from the lowest place all the way back up to the original expression of the Shechina, which is Malchus the Ein Sof. That when a person realizes that the neshama's struggle, when it's chased, when it feels that it's chasing something, when it's hungry, when it's craving, when it's yearning, when it's forlorn, when it's sad, when it loses hope in itself, when it's overwhelmed, in all of those places, those feelings are not meant to be ignored as if they are secondary symptoms to human experience that do not find expression in Avodas Hashem. Adarabba Ibcha Mastabra, those experiences are meant to become the vessel in which we transform the Yerida into the Aliyah. That's where we take shape of the Ani itself, of the sense of self, of the Kli, of the individual neshama that each and every one of us reflects in this world. And when we can transform our own suffering, our own difficulty, and again, the suffering just has to be the slightest awareness of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems absent in my life. And in that moment, I'm mahapech my own experience into a kli of the ani ha'elyon, and then I gain the ability to draw myself all the way back up to the source of all things, which is the ayin hashorashi, which is the secret of Keser, which is the secret of Atika Stima'a, which is the secret of Reshad Loas Yada. What the Komarno Rebbe is doing when he allows himself to take on full shape as an individual, as a tzaddik who is revealing the inner workings of his spirit, he's reflecting for us what happens when a mensch identifies with the Shechina and becomes a kli of Malchus, and they become a cheftza of the Ani de Kedusha. And once we encounter that Malchus, now we know how to bring it all the way back up. So first and foremost, the Komarno Rebbe is masbir to us the difficulty of being a human being, the struggle, and giving allowance and permission to experiencing that struggle, and putting words, profound words to that struggle, powerful words, poetic words, of really not mincing words when it comes to describing the forlornness that the soul feels when it's overwhelmed by something. Not to pretend that it doesn't feel like death 1,000 times over when the mind suddenly is stuck in that place of, where are you, Hashem? Not to pretend that a person doesn't feel like they're thrown from the heights of the worlds down to the lowest abysmal depths of the worlds. Not to feel afraid that I'm still stuck in klipas noga. Adraba, ipcha mistabra, this is what is meant to be felt. A person has to be feeling these things. A person has to be aware of the hastara, because that's the hechetimsa to owning myself as a kli of Malchus. And when I come to identify myself as Malchus, so then there's certain halachos that apply to Malchus. And one of the important halachos, one of the most important halachos that apply to Malchus, which every neshama has the ability to identify its own experiences as, is that in spite of the fact that Malchus and the Ani of Malchus goes so down to the lowest places imaginable, nevertheless, it is rooted in that miraculous and wondrous nexus of Keser Elyon and Malchus Tachton, where the Malchus has the ability to go all the way up to Keser immediately to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically there, to uncover the osios of Ayin, Aleph Yud Nun, of nothingness within the Ani of somethingness, the Aleph Nun Yud. And this is the reason, one of the reasons that the Komarno Rebbe spoke so much, like we saw last week, about his own personal process, because he was showing us that each and every yid could be Malchus. And if each and every yid could be Malchus, emani kan hakol kan, in that place we have the ability of drawing ourselves all the way back up to Ayin. But before we go all the way back up to Keser, which we're going to discuss next week, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to pause today to speak about the level of Yehuda, the second yud of the Komarno's name, Malchus itself. What does it mean to be in Malchus? What is Malchus? What is the role of Malchus? What's the purpose of us needing to be stuck in Malchus? And so for this, it's very difficult, or I'm finding it very difficult for myself to be mitzamsem in terms of the particular sources that I would like to use to bring out the teachings from the Komarno Rebbe. Because like we showed last week, you can collect different makoros from different places and show a collection and a likut of different teachings that the Komarno Rebbe himself wrote, and to collect the sugya out of it. And then there are times where we just have to really take the Komarno at his word and believe that even in one sefer, in the few paragraphs that he writes in one particular parak, in one sefer, has the ability of also giving us the full measure of the Komarno Rebbe. Because the Komarno Rebbe wrote so expansively and so extendedly upon nearly every topic. But nevertheless, when it comes to the innermost parts of what the Komarno is revealing to us, it doesn't matter where you look. You can pick it up anywhere. You can pick it up in Likutim. You can pick it up in the Zohar Chai. You can pick it up in the Heichal Bracha. You can pick it up in Nesiv Mitzvah, in Notzer Chesed. But what we're going to do today is we're going to focus in particular in Nesiv Mitzvah, in the Nesiv Emunah, in Shvil Hashlishi. Those are the places that we're going to be reading from primarily today. And in the new editions with the biur of the Or Pnei Yitzchak, what they've done is they've done an incredible job, redemptive job in collecting the makoros from elsewhere amongst the Komarno Rebbe's writings and drawing them together onto the page of whatever sefer that you're learning. So if you're learning Notzer Chesed, so then you have every place in Zohar, not every place, but the places in Zohar Chai and Heichal Bracha and Nesiv Mitzvah that are also speaking about that same point. And you get to really pick up on the nuance that the Komarno Rebbe was doing, even though he was repeating seemingly the same idea over and over. Nevertheless, each and every time there's an addition or there's a subtraction, and there's a profound level of precision inherent within the fluid flow that the Komarno Rebbe gives us in his writing. And what we're going to do is take from Shvil Hashlishi of Nesiv Mitzvah, Nesiv Emunah. And then at the end of this year, we're going to go to the biur on Megillas Esther and bring this back to Megillas Esther as we prepare ourselves to become the Kalim of Malchus, which was Esther Hamalka. And the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves Esther Malka the most because HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves our avoda from the perspective of Malchus itself, from the perspective of our ani, the notion of selfhood, constriction, concealment. And we're going to see why that is. And we're going to bring Malchus itself back up to its source. But we're not going to go up to the highest source of Malchus yet. That's what we're going to do next week. Next week, we're going to talk about Malchus Aganuza Beradla. We're going to talk in preparation for Purim about bringing Malchus all the way back up to Kesser to its loftiest point. But here today, we're going to be talking about Malchus, and we're going to talk about Malchus to the degree that Malchus has to be brought back to Bina. Once we find ourselves in Malchus and we can identify what Malchus is, then the next step is to reveal that Malchus is really rooted in Bina, and that all of the severity of Malchus is in truth rooted in the origination and the proliferation of Gvura as it expresses itself in Bina itself, but it's still refined there. And then the next level of abstraction is to go from Malchus being raised up to Bina, and then taking it to the real place that it needs to go to, which is Chachma and Keser. So last week we spoke about the externalization of Malchus, the suffering of the self itself and its human conditionality, even by the level of the tzaddik. Today we're going to be contextualizing that and showing how all of that is deeply rooted in reflection on the power of what Malchus is. And we're going to end with bringing Malchus up to Bina, which is the second shlav of the Komarno Rebbe's name. And then what we're going to do next week, Be'ezras Hashem, is go into the derech of Aliyas Malchus to Keser, which can only take place after we bring Malchus to Bina. And so there needs to be a bringing of Malchus to Bina, which is what we're going to talk about today. And only then can we go even beyond Bina into Chachma and then finally into Keser, which is the secret of Aniva Ayin B'Vasachas. So for the Komarno Rebbes, we're going to see Nishmas Yisrael, the neshama of each and every Jew, is reflective of Malchus, and that Malchus cannot be revealed without the neshama of each and every Jew. Every chelek of Nishmas Yisrael, of chelek Eloi Kamimal, is a shtick of the Shechina, Kaviyachal, is a chelek Eloi Kamimal, is reflective of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. And therefore, when I can align my own experiences to the experience of Shchinta Begalusa, I've already abstracted my own personal narrative. I haven't denied my narrative. I've just abstracted my narrative onto a higher narrative, which is the suffering of the Shekhinah. And that me as an individual in my selfhood is a reflection of the Shekhinah. But because we're talking about a reflection on selfhood, which is by definition separate from the infinite, this is where the real birur and the clarification of Malchus is going to be carried out. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ayin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is absolute nothingness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite beyond all measure. And even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Matzamtzim himself, nevertheless, by dint of the deep bond between somethingness and its original root in nothingness, all somethingness is perpetually yearning to ascend back up to nothingness. All creation is perpetually burning within itself to ascend upwards to its source in absolute nothingness, to be completely nullified in its root. All things desire to move upwards. The drive behind all things is to move upwards, a perpetual churning and a burning to move back up to the source. And all pain is felt as a result of a distance from the source, of a sense of being distanced and descending and being thrown away from the source. And because that burning desire at the heart of existence and separation is to reach back up to its true source, which is the infinite, so theoretically, existence would never be able to take shape. The purpose of existence, which is the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to create a place of separation so that we can be the ones to carry out the full revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's potency through our own experiences, that we can come to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu's names, and we can come to be Madama Milsa Lamilsa, and to Mahu Af'ata, to live the principles of the Ramak, and to be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to love other Yidden, to think about other Yidden, to be merciful to other people, to be compassionate to other people, to love others, to be patient, to be long-suffering, to realize that they know not what they do, to find the capacity to forgive others, to be just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol. That when we learn that our job is to be just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we want existence to continue. The purpose of reality is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted there to be a tzimtzum, so that we can then become the vehicles that reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. But tzimtzum necessitates concealment. And concealment does not want to remain concealed. Concealment wants to run back up. So there's an issue. The infinite creates the finite, but the finite is perpetually yearning and burning and desiring to go right back up to the infinite, to the degree that theoretically nothing can get done. And that the entire plan of existence, which is to reveal the nothingness from the side of somethingness itself, to reveal the light from the side of darkness itself, would seemingly be nullified and negated from the get-go because everything is perpetually returning back to the infinite. In order to answer up this problem, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Nishmas Yisrael. And Nishmas Yisrael receives the Torah. The secret of Nishmas Yisrael, the secret of Yesh, Reish Lamed Aleph, which is the Osios of Yisrael, says the Heilige Komarno, is the secret that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the soul of the Jew. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Jewish people so that we will ensure that existence does not return back to the infinite light from whence it came, without following and carrying out the task that it must carry out. If it were not for Nishmas Yisrael, which is the Shoresh of the Tzimtzum, Yisrael b'cha asher b'cha espaer, it's you, B'nai Yisrael, that I am going to be mislabesh myself in, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's only Nishmas Yisrael which represents the Tzimtzum necessary to ensure the distance between the infinite and the finite. Everything else doesn't know how to maintain that desire to return back to infinitude, and everything else burns up in its desire to return back to its source to the degree that all of existence would be nullified. But Nishmas Yisrael contains a certain outgrowth of somethingness that is hidden within the very depths of nothingness, that once it's expressed and once it's congealed through the initial stages of the Tzimtzum, it takes on a certain rootedness, it takes on a certain congealment, it takes on a certain yeshus, it takes on a certain somethingness and a certain ani and a certain kli orientation that cannot go back to normal, that cannot revert back to its original state without the work down here being done. That's the secret of Nishmas Yisrael, where ani, where Malchus, where the outgrowth that comes out of the infinite and congeals itself to such a degree that it can't go all the way back in. And therefore, there is going to be a moment of tarrying. There is going to be a durational pause between the expression from the infinite down into the finite and the return of the finite back up to the infinite. If it were not for Yisrael, which is the secret of the Tzimtzum, which is Yesh, Reish, Lam, and Aleph, so then everything would revert all the way back up to what it was. Nimtza, in accordance to this, that every element of our souls, every element of Nishmas Yisrael, every experience of Nishmas Yisrael, every feeling, every momentary encounter with something in this world is our job to be the Tzimtzum that ensures the maintenance of existence that seems to be separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The reason for that is because the soul needs to do the work, that we need to utilize ourselves, and we need to be mavar the virurim, and we need to do the mitzvos, and we need to learn the Torah, and we need to be mitkaber from times of darkness. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. He wants to reveal himself by way of Nishmas Yisrael. And it's only Nishmas Yisrael, it's only Yesh, Reish, Lamed, Aleph that ensures the perpetual existence of the world. That is the selfhood of Nishmas Yisrael. That is the self of the Yid. That is the self of a Yehudi. That is not meant to be erased. That is not meant to be negated. That is not meant to be hidden away in some attic somewhere. That is not meant to be hidden away from civilization. That is not meant to be completely transcendent. Adraba, Ipcha Mustaber, the avoida of the Yid is to be Ma'uravim Habrios, to draw the transcendence down into immanence, to allow Malchus itself to be reflective of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we can bring Malchus back up to Bina. Then we can be mamtik all the dinim of Malchus. And then once we're mamtik all of the dinim of Malchus, then we come to understand that the limitation and the koyach HaGvul is fundamentally necessary, because this is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get the tainug kavyachol, when we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the ani, the sense of self that remains after all of the bittul is done, that need to remain a self, that need to remain a subject, that need to remain separate and apart from the general whole, so that I still feel myself to be something that juts out of the infinite and doesn't yet return back into it in absolute negation. In spite of the fact that typically that would be seen as the remnant of an ego, what the Komarno Rebbe shows us is that is the chelik of Malchus itself. That's Malchus and Golus. That's the Yerida of the Malchus of Atzilus into the worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, where the self is still concealed and covered over by the Klipas Noiga and by, God forbid, the surrounding lights of the general Klipa. But typically our job is to be Mavara ourselves from within the Klipas Noga, as we saw last week. And it's our job to grow from that place to reveal how Nishmas Yisrael is part and parcel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Keser. And that cannot happen without the delay that takes place down here in the congealment of Malchus, to the degree that it appears that there's something that cannot be mevutal back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is that stubborn bone in the throat of existence that prevents it from returning back up to its shoresh? That is Nishmas Yisrael. Nishmas Yisrael is the reason, we are the pause, we are the interruption that HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires so desperately, so to speak, that he wants his Gilui to come up from here. from here dafka. And if it were not for us down here, this entire world would be mavutal b'tachlis habitul, because it would have no reason to stay down here. It would want to go all the way back up. Nimtza, that every sense of self and every moment of concealment and revelation that a yid experiences in this world is a reflection of Malchus, is a reflection of that which continues to enable HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world to go the way that he wants it to go. And that's why the Komarno Rebbe is talking about himself, because each and every one of us can talk about ourselves. And this is what Rabbi Nachman was doing as well. This is a secret yichud that takes place. The Rebbe Shlita points out that when Malchus goes into exile, when Malchus is yored down into the worlds of separation, so seemingly there's no absolute yichud that's taking place in that place of Malchus when it finds itself stuck in godless and exile. And that the only time that Malchus, that the neshama of the Yid is going to get what it needs is when it ascends upwards to the world of Atzilus and it has what it needs. But there's a hidden secret that the Komarno Rebbe points out in a few places, that even though Malchus is going down into the realms of separation, nevertheless, it's not left alone. There is an element, there's a shlichus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down, which is almost like the bechina of Kudsha Berichu that comes down with us into exile, the shirish of the Shechina, that is with us in every element of our experiences. So that even though we're not in the place of bringing our Malchus back up to Olam HaAtzilus yet, we're still just bringing it back up to Bina. Nevertheless, there's a yichud that's taking place. There's the secret zivug. There's a secret unity that the neshama has, even in its forlornness, even in its descent down into the territories of concealment. There's a secret unity that is perpetually taking place, which enables us to get back to that place where we can go back to that full unity that will take place afterwards. There's the gula haprat, which is taking place in each and every moment. Each and every moment of a person's self-awareness of Malchus is an awareness of the tachlis of the tzimtzum, which is to be mamtik all of the tzimtzum to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down there. And the yichud that takes place down below in the lowest places is the secret of the nekuda of the pnimius hashchina that goes down with us into exile. And so this is not simply how do I see myself in terms of how things are going to be in the future when things are fundamentally refined. But the light of the Komarno Rebbe is giving us the ability to see ourselves as we are from the very present moment in which we find ourselves, which we have right in front of us at the very moment that we're consciously aware of reality, to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu there without delay whatsoever, because there's a hint of that infinite light which goes down with us. The Komarno Rebbe points this out in the secret of the Hay of Malchus, which is really composed of a Dalid and a Vav. That the Dalid goes down, that's the Dalus, that's the lower Dalid of David HaMelech, which descends down into death. And it appears to be devoid, only waiting for that time of the light to be revealed. But the Vav that goes down, which is what makes the Dalid into a Hay, the Vav in the inside of the Dalid, that goes down and that gives vitality. That's the hidden yichud that is perpetually taking place within Malchus, even when it finds itself below in the territories of concealment. And when we can refine our Malchus, when we can reveal that we are the Merkava to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then this is where we're going to uncover this true secret of Emunah. And this is where Malchus is now going to go back up to Bina, in the secret of Tshuva, in the secret of bringing the self back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu without negating the self, but maintaining a self. And then the goal is going to bring it back to an even higher place of Ayin, where the self remains, but it's now nullified in Ayin. So now let's read some of the Lashonos of the Komarno Rebbe in Nesiv Mitzvosacha. We're reading again from Shvil Shlishi, from Shvil Shlishi. So the Komarno Rebbe says as follows. Oy, v'ani shalohu. And when a person comes to understand their element of the ani, their selfhood, the fact that they're the reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. So we come to understand that in truth, it's just a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ubir hadvarim, and this is in Nesiv Emunah Os Gimel, Shvil Hashlishi Os Gimel. Explanation of the matter is as follows. Because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to create the world, there was no possibility of the world continuing to exist. Why? Because everything, all of creation, was going to ascend back up to its supernal source and nothingness, blessed be it, until HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Jewish people. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Jewish people, the world had stability. The world was able to maintain its own existence. Because the name Yisrael represents Reish Aleph Lamed. There is Reish Aleph Lamed. Reish Aleph Lamed here for the Komarno represents Keser Chochma and Bina, or Chochma, Bina, and Das, but it also represents the 231 permutations of letters, which represent the thisness of the world, the concealment of the world. That Yisrael represent the Tzimtzum itself. We are the Tzimtzum. It's the secret of the Tlos Reish and Eloyin, that we have Chachma, Bina, and Das, and because we have those things, we're able to maintain our presence of mind even in exile, even in concealment. And so the worlds continue to exist and they don't return back to the way they were because we remain down here. We remain down here in order to ensure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire is going to be met out, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire for the elevation of this world to be reflected. That Nishmas Yisrael is the secret of the Tzimtzum. And this is what happens, says the Komarno Rebbe, that everything returns back to Ayin Mamish. Everything wants to ascend all the way upwards to nothingness, to the clarity of the infinite light, and even higher than that, to the place of Reshad Lo Asyada, the literal infinite itself, to the innermost point of infinitude itself. But nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Mitzamsim himself, and he engarbed himself down here within the minds of the Jewish people. And everything is perpetually returning to that place of nothingness and back to that place of infinitude. But nevertheless, there's a little bit of a root source that remains down here below in the sense of somethingness and something that can be grasped, which is why it's still not referred to as that part that has returned back to nothingness yet. The part that refuses to return back to nothingness completely is the element of Nishmas Yisrael. The element of Nishmas Yisrael, that's the Malchus. That's the element of Ani. That's the element of Yesh. That's perpetually connected to nothingness, literally, without any blink of the eye. But in the end of the day, it's the Ani that has to remain so that we can then bring it back up into the light of the infinite. And this is where we can take our Ani, Ani shalohu, meaning my sense of ani is his. That when I can nullify my ani, I connect to the ani of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is what protects me so that I should not find complete bittul entirely and return back to things as if nothing ever was, but rather I can allow the tzimtzum to enable me in my own identity to take shape in somethingness through the letters of the Torah, and the secret of the Butzina de Kardanusa, and the secret of the emergence of somethingness from within nothingness, which is then what enables us to connect ourselves to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by way of our own existence with real hachna'a, be'emes, until we return back to that nothingness, but now we have the ability of connecting our something to his nothingness, which is going to be the unity of Keser. So we see that the self remains. The self remains. We have to return back to that light of Reshad Lo Asyada. We have to return back to that place of Keser, but that can only be done when we draw ourselves into the picture, when we ensure the resistance of being completely mavutal, and we remain that edge that juts out to ensure that things continue to take shape. We are the Yesh Reish Lamed Aleph. We are Metzius itself. We're trying to return back to Reshad Lo Asyada. But the only way to return back to Reshad Lo Asyada, the only way to maintain the semblance of the self, of my Malchus, of my identity, of my selfhood, without completely losing myself, is to be mavata myself, is to make myself smaller and smaller and smaller, to grasp how small I am through the bitulim, to come to a place of being a tola, a katan, afar ve'efer, built the yediyah v'hasaga. I don't know anything at all, batal mamish, but I'm still a self. And if a person doesn't do that, ein ani v'hu yichelim l'dor ba'echad, the ani of the mensch, the sense of malchus of the individual, if it doesn't have that proper sense of bittul, the bittul of making itself shafel, but not pretending it doesn't exist, so then that sense of ani, that sense of self, cannot be there with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki ani hu shetoifes atzmo liyesh, because the part of self that we have to hold on to is the part of self that continues to grasp ourselves as somethingness. And we do things for ourselves, and we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu through ourselves. But if it's without hasaga, if it's without really understanding the role that we play, it's impossible for these two elements to be unified together, and they remain separated. And a person falls down and it becomes avodah zarah mamish. The fact that there's a self The fact that we are tasked with being a sense of self in this world, and we can't just run into nothingness. We can't just negate ourselves in the absolute nothingness of it all, which is that pessimistic bittul that comes from the east. Adraba, Ibcha Mustaber, we are a people of somethingness. We are Yesh, Reish, Lamed Aleph, and that we have to be mahapich the self itself into the Merkava for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the danger is that this self can become avodah zarah mamish. The shorish of all klipa, the shorish of all tumma, the shorish of all concealment is gaiva, is elzar, el nechar, thinking that I'm better than somebody else, thinking that I have the right to speak down to somebody else, thinking the right that I'm more spiritually connected than another yid. But rather, I should see myself on the level of ayin. I should see myself as absolutely the lowest. I should see myself as halavai pachul shebepchusim. I should see myself, if I understand the true nature of Nishmas Yisrael, I should understand that I am as low as anybody else. I am as unified as any other soul is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In that way, the ani becomes the merkava to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't become the impediment, but rather it becomes the merkava. It becomes the true place in which I'm going to be able to raise myself up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When I accept upon myself that my element of my ani has to be connected to ayin, and through all of the struggles that I go through in this world, and all of the concealment that I go through, and all the spiritual struggles, all of the wickedness in the world, and the heart breaks within the individual over and over and over until it becomes almost as if it's nothing. And through this perpetual awareness of this nothingness of the self now has the ability of going all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being Masig Ruach HaKodesh, and all of the levels that we're searching for. But the secret of this is that all of us have, and this is Ostalid now in the Siv Mitzvah Secha, all of us have an element of Malchus, which is referred to as the self, which is referred to as Ani. And this is where we do things for ourselves. And this is the place where we grasp ourselves as somethingness. But the only reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the task of being a self, of having an ego, of having an identity, of being a subject that continues to sense itself as separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though we're fundamentally connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is so that existence should continue to exist and that it shouldn't return back to absolute nothingness where there's a denial of all particularity. The Nishmas Yisrael is the secret of the Prat, where the secret of the Ani that ensures that Tzimtzum can continue. And therefore, a person has to understand the role of the self. The self is there to ensure that there is the irreducible shape of somethingness, the tzuras halavana that enables the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be revealed by way of the tzimtzum. Everything else doesn't understand the tzimtzum. Everything else wants to run upwards to the infinite and deny the tzimtzum. We are the secret of guarding the tzimtzum. We are the secret of understanding that even after the tzimtzum is undone, there will still be a tzimtzum, because that's Nishmas Yisrael. That's the secret of Megillas Esther, that there's a hastar that's going to continue. We can't overwhelm our identification with the self, but we have to understand the kernel of the self, the fact that there's a part of me that's not going to be mevutal. Instead, I should be mashbil atzma ke'ezav u'kutola'as, that I should understand my smallness, and that I should only focus on my selfhood for the sake of developing a healthy perspective of avodas Hashem and for understanding the depth of the body. And a true sign of this, says the Komarno, if I understand the role of the self, it's that when I encounter the descent, and when I encounter shame, and when I encounter struggle, nevertheless, I'm not falling away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Adarabba Ibcha Mustaber, this becomes a place for me to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I receive it all with love and with joy, without any hope for anything to pull me out of this, or any hope to make me feel better about myself, but rather just to be in it with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in that place, that's where the illumination of the lights come out, and that's where the self gets transported directly to Ayin. And then at that place, the illumination comes, and there's a profound joy that shines forth within the heart of the individual. That's when the self is going to reveal itself most potently. That's the secret of Malchus, where the sense of self now serves the goal of revealing more and more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. More and more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's only the Yid that has the ability, says the Komarno Rebbe, and this is in Osvav of Shvil Shlishi. Listen to this language. It's only us, it's only the ego of the Yid that has the ability to be Mechadesh Tamid or V'chayis U'Meichin Tesefes Meruba Ala Iker. It's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Matzil HaElyon, or Ein Sof, has the ability of drawing newness down into existence. But it's only the Yid and the soul of a Yid and the Ani, the Malchus of a Yid, which has the ability of awakening that desire. Ki kol Chiddush Umamish Me'or Ein Sof. That all Chiddush, all his Chadshus of light comes from the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And down here, we don't have the ability of renewing that. We don't have the ability of drawing down more infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But because Nishmas Yisrael has the ability of maintaining itself in the face of that annihilation of the light, and we continue to exist, and we're not mevutal, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is boicher b'Nishmas Yisrael to exist, and Yisrael b'cha asher aspire, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is malbish himself in Nishmas Yisrael, so then we come to be the vessel that continues to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at that point, when we realize the true role of the self, that's what we refer to as ha'alas hanitzotzos. When a person encounters existence and selfhood in this world and brings it back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're perpetually refining every element of the self, every encounter of the self, which we're not destroying, but rather cultivating to ensure that we know its rightful place, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to have the gaiva to serve him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to understand that we're the lowest of the low, and it's from that place that we can take the sarbit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the gaiva. And we can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Gaiva de Kedusha. And it's in that place that we're mevayer over and over. And when we clarify things over and over and we allow that spark of holiness to ascend upwards from that place of concealment, there's a renewal of the mind. There's a hischadshas hamoichin. And the Komarno Rebbe says something very powerful here. He says, and we can know this from within our own selves itself, because each and every Yid knows. They know what it feels like when there's the illumination in their soul, when they come to a place of understanding the role of what they're meant to be engaged in. And this is the secret of coming down into this place. This is a teaching that's brought in Noitzer Chesed. It's a teaching that's brought in Katam Oifir. It's a teaching that's brought in Sif Mitzvah Secha. But it's what the Komarno Rebbe says about his Heilige uncle, Rav Moshe Mesambor, the brother of the Heilige Ateres Tzvi of Zidichov. And he asks, the Heilige Ateres Tzvi of the Rav Moshe Sambor asked his brother, the Ateres Tzvi of Zidichov, that in his old age, in his youthful age, he had to go sometimes to the town, to the fair, in order to make some money. And whenever he would go there, whenever he found himself amongst the non-Jews and all of the externalization of this world, he found that when he went to daven mincha, he was illuminated with an illumination of the spirit that shone forth up to Shemayim. And he couldn't understand what it was. He didn't understand if he was mistaking himself, if he was tricking himself. Maybe it's klipas noga. Why should I be feeling what I'm feeling in a place of concealment like this? And so he went to his brother, the Ateres Tzvi, to ask. And the Ateres Tzvi says, Ma'ata metahe achi. Why are you concerned about this? Why are you surprised? When you walk in the field and when you walk in the town and when you walk in the fair and when you walk amongst the nations of the world and you maintain holy thoughts and you understand the role of self, all of the sparks of holiness that are hidden within this worldly existence, all of them connect themselves to you and all of them are clarified with you. And when you connect yourself back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that infinite light and you receive that new taste of experience, so in that moment, it's as if you've entired the entirety of your days and you've elevated everything up. Nisrabe or hamoichin, the light of consciousness is illuminated from within my own experience. Chayisaini miyader bor, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me life from within the descent into the pit. This is the secret, says the Komarno Rebbe. The wonder of all wonders is that there is absolutely no unity or unification or coupling that takes place above that does not start with the awakening from below, specifically from within Nishmas Yisrael down here. It's us who have the ability of drawing more and more light down. That we have the ability of drawing more light from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing else does. Only Nishmas Yisrael, which survives the tzimtzum. We remain, we don't go all the way back up. We maintain our own individualized existence because we know that our own individualized existence is the secret of the Malchus to Ein Sof, and therefore it's not a stira to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not a stira. And when we ascend upwards and we take our ani and we draw down more illumination from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, there's a complete bittul b'metzius. There's nothing left. But, says the Komarno Rebbe, yesh shel Yisrael ma'amid oisam sheyachzru lahashpia al Yisrael shefa va'or. In truth, everything wants to go back up to the source of the infinite, the stiros, the partzufim, everything, the malachim, everything, the oilamos, everything wants to be mevutal b'tachlis habitul, to be burnt up in a second, quicker than a second, in the light of the infinite light. The only thing that's protecting it. Yesh shel Yisrael. Our sense of self, we remain down here to ensure that all of the celestial forces, all of the seros, and all of the partzufim kaviyachol, and all of the oilamos should continue to stay in their place and to draw down the infinite light down below, because we're not being mevatel ourselves fully. We are maintaining the fundamental bittul down here specifically with the nekuda of Malchus Yisrael, the nekuda of David Malka Mashiach. So Yishal Am Kodesh Garmu Lahem Or Hagadol Hazeh. It's only Klal Yisrael that are causing the influx of infinite light to come back down because we're the Tachlis. And therefore, all of the celestial forces, all of the infinite lights want to ascend upwards. They want to be batel bittel b'metzias. But nevertheless, yesh lahem gam ken shuka gedola lahashpia la'am hakodesh Yisrael. But nevertheless, there's also a deep desire to continue expressing the infinite light down to Klal Yisrael because we're the ones who are causing the infinite light to be increased. We want that light and we want that vitality from the infinite light to come down here. And therefore, the world continues to operate. The world continues to operate to ensure that this world is going to be what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be, which is the secret of the renewal of the infinite light. There's no other way for this to be done. The Malachim don't have the ability to do this. Even if all of the Malachim gathered together, they couldn't do this. But one Yid has the ability to do this when they find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their loneliness, in their smallness, in the Tohu Vohu and the Chayshech. And this is the role. This is the role of what we have to do with our ani. This is what we have to do with the sense of self. We have to be miyached, and this is Ozayin in Shvil Hashlishi. We have to create unifications and attach ourselves to the depth of connectivity to the infinite light to the point that we are nearly completely nullified, and all elements of Yeshus, all elements of somethingness from within ourselves are negated until we come to a place of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the sake of not receiving anything at all, because all of my selfhood and all of my somethingness still stands in the place of being a prevention to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But nevertheless, I maintain the fact that I still need to maintain myself. This is where I learned the secret of bittul. I'm not denying my mitzias. I'm still something, but I'm a nothing sheba something. I'm a ma. Chazal is gematria ma. Ein legamre, but I'm still a self that knows how to hold on to ein. I'm conscious of myself, but I'm not letting myself become attached to anything. And this is the moment of the true point of unity where I forget myself entirely, but I'm still there. Believe emes, in a heart that is true. Hispashtas agashmias. This is the extending out of my own body while maintaining my own selfhood, as described in Shulchan Aruch. But it's impossible to do this all the time, because even the self in its refinement is not able to maintain this. And therefore, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu ensures is that the sense of self and the sense of somethingness is going to be engraved, it's going to be congealed, it's going to take on more shape. It's going to drag things back down. And the essential nature of somethingness and the extension of somethingness is when it's expressed in a holy way through Knesset Yisrael, which is the Jewish people, which is each and every one of us, that after all of the Yehudim and after running up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Kriyat Shema and taking all of the concealment of this world and schlepping it up to the Yichud Ilah of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and realizing that it's Achdus Pshuta all the way up and all the way down, and that we've elevated our neshamos from the depth of the klipa to grasp the chizuk and the yeshus that we had. We have to make sure that we hold on to the refinement of the self. This is the purpose of the mitzvos. The purpose of the mitzvos is to take the self and transform it into an ani de kedusha. Not to, God forbid, think that the role is just to forget about ani. We need ani. This is what bina is. We need ani. We need a sense of self, but the sense of self has to be refined to such a degree that it's just reflective of the miraculous capacity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed within Nishmas Yisrael. Hey. And this is what the Komarno Rebbe says here at the end of Os Zayin. And this is what we said yesterday in Shalosh Shudas on the pasuk of Vayari Lav Hashem be'elonei mamrei. That what's hinted to over there is the fact that even after Avram Avinu has done everything, even after Avram Avinu has completed the Yichud, and now he's coming back down to himself, now he's coming back down, so to speak, into his sense of self, and he's a human being, and he's no longer shaykh to the Malachim. Even when Avram Avinu says that even though I just experienced full bittul, I now have to return back to the world in order to engage in physicality, in order to struggle, in order to learn halacha, in order to do all of those small things in this world that appear to be rooted in somethingness, all of these elements which seem to be servitude and slavery, because I need to grab hold of somethingness, I need to remain in my vessels, because otherwise I'm going to be mavutal and ayin. And Avram Avinu says to them, Ani mevakesh milfanecha, I'm asking you, Malachim, I'm asking you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Afal pi kein al ta'azovoti. Even though I have to be a self, the mission of the Yid is to be a self, the mission of the Yid is to be a Malchus, because it's only when the Yid is a Malchus that we have the ability of revealing the Keser Malchus. But the fact that we have to maintain in our sense of selfhood, in the sense of Yeshus, the Yesh Reish Lamed Aleph, the fact that we're not being Mevutal entirely, the fact that we continue to be the resistance of Malchus that does not get usurped back up into the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather retains its own expression in the secret of Hashem Oiz La'amo Yitain, that even after the Bittul HaGamur, there's still going to be a fundamental remnant, an irreducible remnant of Nishmas Yisrael, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Boicher b'Nishmas Yisrael. So then we're able to say that even though I can't go all the way up with you, please stay down here with me. And we're able to draw the Elyonim down into the Tachtonim. This is the cry of Avram Avinu asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to leave him. Why? Because he understood the secret of Gedola Hachnasas Orchim, which is drawing down neshamos and nitzotzos and finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. That's much greater than receiving the face of the Shekhinah, which is going all the way up there. That even though it would be better to go all the way up, I understand that the goal is to return and remain down here, to be me'uravim habrios, to be with the world, to be in a place of bina. And even though it's possible that a person might fall as a result of this, God forbid, or fall into the worst thing in the world, which is making themselves into a god, which is arrogance, and at that point the Shekhinah would leave us. Nevertheless, it's worth it. It's worth it. Gadol hu yoter. And a person has to beg of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for mercy, that he shouldn't leave us for a second, and that we should continue to understand the bittul and the shiftless of our hearts, not by way of smallness, but by way of understanding what Nishmas Yisrael is. And we should always be able to understand that even though I'm small, even though I'm shafel, I'm still Nishmas Yisrael, and afal piken v'yigva libo b'darchei Hashem, that my heart can go strong and confident in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I'm Nishmas Yisrael. V'ezhalcha b'rechava, and that I can extend myself and I can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with confidence. Ki pikudecha v'yichudim shelcha, because my mitzvos down here in this world is what I'm perpetually searching for. I'm not getting into the arrogance. I'm trying so hard to receive you in this world. This is what's going to enable this world to maintain itself, that there's the Roshem, there's the irreducible trace of light and joy and simcha, even when we find ourselves stuck in this world, because we can connect ourselves at each and every moment in our thoughts to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy. And every person can receive everything that they go through with a heart that's filled with joy. And we can do everything in this world for the sake of God, by unifying God in everything that we do. When I drink water, when I walk, when I open a door, when I close the door, when I look out a window, these are all yichudim, to love other yidden, to forgive other Yidden, to give other Yidden strength so that all of us can return back to that simple place of Ani, of the Merkava for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because there's times where a person can daven all day, and then they fall completely to the degree that they become arrogant and they find themselves in a state of anger. And anger and arrogance is seemingly the polar opposite to that spiritual level that they just thought that they reached. And therefore, a person feels that it's impossible for them to reach that infinite light that they tasted a moment ago. But then, specifically, as also this feeling, a person has the ability to enter into the work of tshuva. And halavai sheyasig madregoso. And that if only I were able to reach one level. And there's so many people who don't have the ability of maintaining this humble sense of self, but maintaining a sense of self. And they've been pushed away because it became arrogant, because they made themselves into gods. As the Heilige Komarno writes in the name of the Rishonim, that there's not one person in the Welt that's not over the Isser of making themselves into a god for a moment, which is Gaiva. And therefore we have to beg of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have rachamim on us, to protect us from all things that are negative. And the entire days of the life of Adam HaYisraeli, of the Jewish individual, we have to analyze and refine our character traits. Tavmidos tovos, kuli hai v'ulai, kuli hai v'ulai. This is the goal, to be a self. To be a self, but at the same point that the self should have an absolute bittul, which is the secret of Nishmas Yisrael, including itself within the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But nevertheless, but we maintain the body. We maintain the parts of ourselves that are concealed. And therefore, we draw the worlds into existence. We are the Hamshacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light down here. We are the thing that continues to ensure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lets the world continue. But God forbid, as the Komarno continues in Ois Tes, the klipas are strong and we have to protect ourselves. We have to be careful about the ani. We have to protect it from yeshus and chumrius. We have to prevent ourselves from taking ourselves too seriously and becoming avodah zarah. We have to prevent ourselves from becoming God. We have to prevent ourselves from arrogance. We have to remember our smallness. We have to remember the greatness of everybody else. Anisha B'Kedusha, says the Heilige Komarno, doesn't grasp itself to be better than anything else. It just grasps itself so that it should not be nullified completely. And what it needs to do, it does, and everything else, it's mevatel. And then it has the right to take the sarbit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is gaiva, which is the gaiva of eshkon, ezdacha, v'shafal ruach, nishbarei lev. Then we can uncover our true force. Then we can uncover our true power. And this is the whole inyan of the Meraglim, says the Heilige Komarno in Os Yud, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to descend down into this world itself, into the place of Eretz Yisrael, into the place of Yira, and into that place of needing to do the intense work of self, which seems to be the polar opposite of the light of Bittul. But nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to get sent down in there. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted. That's the place where the light of Mashiach is going to be revealed. The light of Mashiach comes out from Malchus itself when it's schlepped all the way back up to its source in Keser. It's in that place that the true knowledge is going to be revealed from within our own work. When we begin to understand what it is to be Nishmas Yisrael, what it is to be in the Merkava for Malchus, we'll understand why we're down here. We'll understand why we want to resist that full and unbridled level of complete and utter bittul and nullification. But we want to refine the self so that the self becomes the vehicle through which it can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's no being a self without the concealment. There's no being the self without the concealment, which is why, in order to be the self, we have to learn what the concealment is. The only way to draw down the soul of Mashiach, the only way to draw down the Yechidah Shebenefesh, is by going down, down, down into the place of Malchus and allowing ourselves to be the way in which Malchus is refining itself from all concealment. That's the avoid of the Yid. This is the avoid that says the Komarno in Os Yud, that tzaddikim noitlim bezroa, that the tzaddikim take with confidence, like we saw from the Heilige Choyze when he gave the zroa over to the Komarno at the Seder table, with tekifus, with gevura, so as not to be mevutal in the tzimtzum, so as not to be mevutal when things go back up, but rather to retain ourselves afterwards and to refine ourselves by way of the gevuros, to fix our souls, to elevate our souls, to understand what it means to be a mensch, to understand what it means to have a soul, to understand what it means to be in a place of separation. This is the very place that we're going to be able to draw down the shefa. This is the exact place. But again, we have to be careful, because when we're dealing with the self, when we're dealing with Malchus, we can also run into the trap of Ana Amlach, of that sense that I want to be king over everybody else. The desire to be king is not the problem. Every Yid is a king. Every Yid is a chelek Eloi Kaimimal, and every Yid is a yichud of Zun, the Atzilus, that's Meskala, the secret of Banamatel Mashem Elokechem, and every Yid is a melech, even when they lose their Malchus. Every Yid is a melech. The issue is not Ana Emloch. The issue is Ana Emloch at the extent of somebody else's Malchus. The fact that I think my Malchus is better than somebody else's, that's the pigam. But when I realize that I'm a melech and they're a melech and they're a melech, and every element of Nishmas Yisrael and every feeling that any Jew ever has is simply an opportunity for Malchus Kololamim to reveal itself by way of Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim, in that place, there's no problem with the Ani. But when I'm toifes it for myself, that's where the tzimtzum, that's where things break apart. What was the shvira? I wanted too much light. I wanted to go all the way up. I wanted to deny the need for vessels. There was a tshuka that was miskaber to la'alois l'sharasham, to go back up to the source without concealment. And the light was so great that it didn't have the lavush of Nishmas Yisrael that it couldn't function itself. It broke apart. It broke apart because it didn't know the secret of being a self in this world with bittul and a sense of awe in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when they had the desire to rise up, they broke because they didn't have the ability to come back down into the place of Ani. They went all the way up to the Ayin Ha'elyon, which was beyond Olam HaAtzilus, but they didn't come back down. And our job is to fix that, to be Oila La'ayin Elyon, Kol Olam HaAtzilus, to go up to Olam HaAtzilus, and then to be Yored L'Makoma L'Hashpiyu L'Yached, and then to draw Olam HaAtzilus back down into the place of Malchus. And this is the secret of Hislabshus, where the Jewish soul itself becomes the tzimtzum for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. This was meant to be the shlichus of the Meraglim. This was meant to be the shlichus of the Meraglim, for us to realize that we had to be the ani to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ayin. And had we been zoicha to do that without gaiva, without the dakustika issues that came up, so then we would have been zoicha to the light of Mashiach, to the light of the Gula HaMitis, because that takes place specifically mitzad Malchus itself. Kiba emes keshabol la'aretz naflu habre They didn't know how to handle the sense of self. They didn't know how to handle the self and its illumination, which is what takes place in Eretz Yisrael. The self feels itself all the time, and it has to remind itself, ma'od ma'od have shafa ruach, ma'od ma'od have shafa ruach, kitoy v'ha'aretz ma'od ma'od, ma'od ma'od have shafa ruach, kitoy v'ha'aretz ma'od ma'od, v'kol ha'olam kulu gesher tsar ma'od ma'od. Ki be'emes keshenestalik min ha'adam ha'chayus v'ha'moichin or eloiki umamish tam misa. Why couldn't they handle it? Because be'emes, when a person is a self without that illumination of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinitude, and we have to maintain our sense of self, so at that moment it could taste like death, as we saw last week. And it was necessary for them to go down to the place of darkness, to clarify the clarifications and refine the sparks that were hidden within the depths of concealment. And if the soul of the individual is engarbed within hachna'a and yira, and it doesn't grasp itself to be better than anybody else, but it only understands that it's a chelek eloi kaimimal, it understands that its yeshus is the yesh reish lamed aleph, and that its entire purpose is to be oisenachas ruach leor ein sof le'ein tachlis, and that there's no difference ein chiluk etzlo ben shehu megaref bibin b'choshech v'oise bazer rotzen melech elyon o sheyesh lo elios neshama legan eden elyon. The soul realizes that there's no difference whether I'm cleaning out garbage in the darkness or whether I'm ascending into the heights of Gan Eden, and they're announcing for me, wow, look at this neshama that's coming in, because everything is the same for me. Everything is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, when they fell, because they didn't have the ability to understand what the role of Ani was, they fell into a nitzutz of Gaiva, because they wanted to maintain, so to speak, that sense of ayin. That was the Dor HaMidbar. They weren't ready to experience the refinement of the Ani itself. And it's dangerous. They understood. We see over here again that a person can hear Torah from the mouth of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and at the same point they have to be afraid that they're going to be stuck in the next moment. That's what it means to be a mensch, the guardedness. As the Ateret Tzvi says to the Komarno, that's the point. Don't think that you're stuck because you still think you might be in Klipas Noga. You're always going to feel like you might be in Klipas Noga, because Kol Zman that there's a sense of self, there's going to be a fear of being stuck in Klipas Noga. The moment that there's not a fear of being stuck in Klipas Noga is dangerous, because that either means that I've completely forgotten about the need for a self, or I've come to a place of thinking that I'm refined. Adrabah, Ipla Mistabra, we must protect the sense of self at all accounts. But that sense of self must be refined to the point that it becomes a receptacle to draw down the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If a person doesn't hold on to this light properly, and they lose sight of that spiritual illumination of the ayin that they want to feel, then they feel, says the Komarno, as if they're cast out from the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and now they're standing in a place of derech rechoika. Now they're standing in a place of absolute distance. And in that place of absolute distance, we don't have the ability to connect ourselves to the Nekuda HaYisraeli within ourselves. We forget about the Nitzutz HaEliki, which is the Chelek Elokei Mimal Mamish, which is why we continue to struggle with the sense of self, because we're the Merkava for the selfhood of God, so to speak. And we find ourselves in a far path, and in derech rechoika, unable to connect ourselves to the rest of Klal Yisrael. And even a tzaddik can be pushed away immediately, and they can find themselves in derech rechoika. And in a place like that, God forbid, a person starts developing all of these secondary ways of trying to get themselves back up to that place of nothingness, get themselves back up to that spiritual ideal place where they feel they're meant to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they don't know how to deal with the selfhood of Malchus. They don't know how to deal with the fact that the ego remains. And they're not willing to allow themselves to be like every other Yid, Shelo Yeh Me'urevim Yisrael Shav B'Shav. The neshama thinks it has to be better in order to feel good about itself. It doesn't realize that it's enough to be a Yid to feel good about myself. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with all of his compassion, gave us Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is the secret that we have the ability to connect again. We have the ability to connect again to that secret of Zera Yisrael, the Achidim Beilamehach, to become Nishmas Yisrael, to become Yesh Reish Lamed Aleph, to become that place, the Tzimtzum of Metzias, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu continues to have the ability to reveal himself more and more. Od Yoter Tov. And had the Meraglim had this deep Emunah that Gam Ki Eshav B'choshech Hashem Orli, that even though I find myself stuck in the darkness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still there for me. And even though I feel a selfhood, nevertheless, it's just a receptacle to reveal nothingness. And they had the deep Emunah, if they had the deep Emunah, that even though they fall into Katnus, into Marish Chayra, into the place of death, nevertheless, they should have had the Emunah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could illuminate them, and that they should yearn and expect the redemption at any moment. Then they wouldn't have made the mistake. They would have come to a place of understanding Eretz Yisrael. We would have brought Moshe into Eretz Yisrael, and there would have been a yichud between Ani and Ayin. Malchus in its selfhood would have been refined. And says the Heilige Komarno, there have been numerous times where I've experienced this myself, that after an intense period of lowliness and being mavatal myself, in the next moment, in the blink of an eye, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has illuminated for me a profound and wondrous light that is more wondrous than the mind can conceive of. The avodah is not to get stuck in the notion of trying to escape the self, not to get rid of Malchus, not to deny Ani, but to refine it, to deny Ani, to think I'm better than other Yidden, to think that my avodah is more important than another Jew, to think that I have any role in this world other than to unify myself with Nishmas Yisrael. It's a shtus gamor. Because what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is Rahman Alibabai. Hashem wants the Bina. Hashem wants me to be a self. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to stand strong in this world, not to be mavata myself entirely. And to have the deep confidence that no matter what I go through, I have the ability of returning backwards with a profound gift. The main nisayon of that generation was that they were afraid of ani, and they felt into a place of a sense of selfhood, of thinking that they were better than the other. And therefore, the redemption of Yehoshua was Moshe Rabbeinu protecting him from Gaiva. Like the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh said at the end of his life, Al tivieni regel Gaiva. Don't bring me to Gaiva, because that's Rosh Tevos Esrog. Esrog is Malchus. Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the tzaddikim realize what the role is, to give shape to the Ani de Yisrael, to allow the Yid to understand why we're so important, and why it's not enough for us to be Mavatal, and why every nation in the world has tried to be Mavatal ourselves completely, because the one thing that resists destruction is Nishmas Yisrael. It just has to be done with bittul. Zak the Heilige Komarno. Go a little bit weiter, Chavra. Zak the Heilige Komarno. This relationship that we're talking about, this is an Ois Yud Aleph, this Yesh and the Ani of Nishmas Yisrael, which remains, but nevertheless it's mevutal, it doesn't hold of itself to be anything better than anybody else. This is the secret of Iyu v'chayu v'chad b'hoin. This is the secret of Olam HaAtzilus, where the Kalim and the Oirus are unified together. This is the Raz D'Meim Nusa, how we can be a self and also a no self at the same time. But it's not negating the self and living only in no self. It's transforming the self into a vessel to receive no self. And then the self is reflective of the sense of no self. Each and every moment, there's a balance going back and forth between the Oirus and the Kalim. There's never a moment where the self and the no self are not fundamentally unified. There's no moment where the Kalim are not aware of the fact that there's still a Kli that has to be Mavatal itself to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they maintain their individualized existence in order so as that creation should continue to be something formidable and expressive. It's taking place in each and every moment. And when we have the ability to understand what it means to be a self, when we refined ourselves after the Shvira to find ourselves in vessels to be a self, now we can say Yisrael Asher B'cha Aspire, that it's you, Klal Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take glory in. Now, Zak the Heilige Komarno, what does that mean? What that means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to draw down his light and allow it to congeal through Klal Yisrael itself. Because now Klal Yisrael themselves have grasped themselves as being the vessel and the Ani and the Yesh and the Kalim in order to draw down the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though it's with Miyut and Hachna Gedola. And a person should know Shekol Davar Shuhu Rosh Hu Ayin, that the nothingness and the top is going to be drawn down into the lower parts, which is the sense of self. Which means to say that it's known that the higher something is, it engarbs itself in something lower than it, and that lower level has the ability of revealing, by way of concealing, that level that's higher than it. In the secret of Habasha, of engarbment, it's known that every higher level that's higher than the level lower than it, the lower level serves as a garment to reveal the higher level by way of concealing it. By covering it over and allowing it to be engarbed, it enables the light to shine forth to the lower levels. And so in order so that Metzius should not go back to the place that it came from, and it should be nullified in complete nullification, So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was melubish betachton. What is the tachton that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be mitzamtzim himself is? That tachton is the ones who minimize their light into the place of ani v'yesh, nishmas Yisrael. And the more we hold ourselves to have that ayin, that nothingness at the heart of our ani, the more we're going to be the receptacles to draw the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down into Metzias. The more we're going to have the ability of drawing HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. When a person has the ability to do this, when I could come to understand why it's good to be a bardas in this world, what it means to be a person, what it means to hold on to the fact that I'm a human being, to hold on to all of my elements of self and to refine them, then I uncover that secret of das, which is the secret of Mashiach, which emerges out of exile itself. And then the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be revealed. And then the Yechiel Shebenefesh is going to be grasped, as we're going to see. But first, we're still dealing in the place of Malchus. We're still dealing in the place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to maintain a sense of self. The way that the tzaddikim do this, the Komarno writes in Osir Aleph, is through absolute nullification of ourselves, to nullify ourselves at the root of existence, which is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is perpetually being drawn down into my mind, to become literally like nothingness, like a small worm, without any expectation of reward, to grab hold of the secret of a Shem Tov. This is the elevation of Malchus all the way back up to its place, to draw down the light of absolute nullification while continuing to sense ourselves as being something. Listen to the Lashon over here. A person should conceive of themselves as a small worm that crawls upon the ground, and even less. A person should join themselves together with every soul in Klal Yisrael. And we should take great joy and pride, and to say to ourselves, Halavai sheyiyeh lo chelek im hapachus shebebechusim ki hu be'einav yoter garua mikol hagaruim shebe'olam. That when a person refines the self properly, they truly, with joy, enter into the recognition that Halavai should have the ability of connecting to the lowest of the Yidden. Because the koyach of Nishmas Yisrael, the koyach of the tzimtzum, to hold, what can hold the tzimtzum, what can hold the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here other than Nishmas Yisrael and the Torah? And the Torah is only holy because Nishmas Yisrael learned the Torah, and because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah to Nishmas Yisrael. This is the element of drawing down the highest levels of Keser down into the lowest level of Malchus. And this is happening all the time. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be revealed by way of the vessels of the self. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be down here. We are the Memutza. Nishmas Yisrael is the in-between that ensures the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in existence. We are the tzimtzum, as the Komarno writes in Osir Beis. We are the tzimtzum to the profound brilliance of that innermost point of light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal. We are the Nekudas Tzion. We are that innermost point. We are the Nekudas Bas Ayin. We are the black dot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, so to speak, that He loves us. We are Yehudi. We are Jews. Shoresh Yisrael. V'neskal shleimus nekudas Yisrael kiyum kol ha'olam shelo yachzeru lihivatel ba'otzim shleimus b'hiras orin sof. And when Klal Yisrael are full, and when Klal Yisrael is able to reveal the nekuda Yisraeli within each and every one of themselves, when each and every one of us could grab hold of that chelek of Yehudi within ourselves, that's koifer and avodah zarah, that is mevatel itself, that lives with the light of Mordechai HaTzadik. At that point, we are the ones who are ensuring that the world not go back to its original place of absolute nothingness prior to the creation of the world, which would undo HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. But rather, we are the ones who ensure the continuity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. To allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal what He wants to reveal. By being down here, by owning ourselves, by way of bittul, and not trying to deny ourselves, we enable ourselves to become the resting place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when the infinite light is hidden, and what remains is that Nekuda of Yisrael, the Kli of Malchus, in that place it feels like we have nothing at all. Until HaKadosh Baruch Hu returns the Kav or Ein Sof into us through the Torah, and we have the ability of living with that bittul. We have the ability of living with that bittul. But the lights, even though the light returns, there's still a tzimtzum. And this is the language of the Komarno. that even though the light returns, there's still going to remain a certain vacant space, which is referred to as the garment of arrogance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal in the world, which is the same gematria as a vacant space, meaning that vacant space, our awareness of the tzimtzum, is that gaiva de kedusha, that ani ha'elyon, that enables us to be the ani that draws down the ayin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that continues to remain separating the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the world that holds the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The shayrish of this is the gaiva de kedusha shemispaeru misgaya belevushav, that I take pride in who I am. I take pride and I have a gaiva de kedusha nishmas Yisrael sheikranheim nishmas Yisrael shein levushan elav ayidei kiyum hatayr v'hamitzvos. We become the levush of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kadin kamsa de levushim in Yubei. We are the tzimtzum. We are the kli that conceals the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to reveal it. The kol zeh shelo yachzor hadavar lekadmuso, so as to ensure that Mashiach comes and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have to start everything over. That's the gaiva, the kedusha of Klal Yisrael, that we should be the kli for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we should be the kli that ascends upwards and let go of every sense of self. It's only in the place of bittul of the kli, but it still continues to be a kli, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reveal himself. Aval mitzius zeh hagaiva hu kiyam kol ha'olamos. This gaiva, the kedusha, this yesh reish lamed aleph of the Malchus of Nishmas Yisrael, is the shorish of all things. But the ikr is to be a refined kli, says the Komarno, literally negated, with a broken heart and a destitute spirit, awareness of my nothingness in front of every yid, no matter how small, to the degree that I have to strengthen myself at all times, that I should strengthen myself into being a yid, into having a yesh de kedusha, into having an ani de kedusha, v'yigva libo b'darchei Hashem, to allow myself, to awaken myself to confidence. Not like the foolish individuals who think that it's a mitzvah to be humble and to live with falsha anava that negates the significance of my avodah. Perpetually searching. I have to search. I have to search for ways to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not to search for new ways to negate myself, not to search for new ways to make myself smaller, to be bazui be'enav. But rather I should see myself as nibza, but liba male or v'simcha. My heart should be filled with joy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should find strength within my heart, and I should find strength of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within my heart, to strengthen it, to elevate it back up, to find gaiva de kedusha, to live with chazik ve'ametz. Rak afal pisha ata be'enecha rak. Even though I see myself as empty, nevertheless I have chachma, I have mada, I have everything. And when this nikud is revealed in the heart of Nishmas Yisrael, Yisrael becomes li rosh. We become the head for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal himself. We become the secret of Keser Malchus, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself and there is something capable of receiving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the secret of Nishmas Yisrael, of Malchus, all of our experiences. Through the aspect of the B'chinaso Yesh Rosh V'Raglayim, because of us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a body, Kavyachol. There's a place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal his light. Malu Mata, there's above and below. There's 4 different directions. There's different directionality. Things go in different ways. That's only through the secret of Nishmas Yisrael. And the secret of Nishmas Yisrael is Olamos, Neshamos, and Alikus. This place of Olamos, Neshamos, Alikus, we become the Osios. The Osios are the same thing as Nishmas Yisrael. Nishmas Yisrael are the Osios. They're the irreducible somethingness that remains so as to ensure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's nothingness can be revealed. We are the levushim. The levushim are made up of the osios. This levush is where we begin to have a sense of schar and oynesh, to grab hold of a sense of self for the sake of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not to get caught up in the gaiva of it, God forbid, but rather it is necessary for us, says the Heilige Komarno in Ois Tes Vav, that our rectification is when we come to a place of negating any element of arrogance and thinking that we're better than anybody, but rather owning the fact that we are just a levush, we are a mamutza, we are in between. We're in between, we're a way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself. The self is refined. It's kadin kamsa de levushim in Yubei. It's when we live with a sense of hitat mutaor, derech kiso yumalbush, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concealing his light through us. And all of the levushim are yotzim and hayesoid. They come from that place of yesoid, of smicha, of connectivity. Katointi mikol chasadim. The recognition that I can be small because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you reveal so much to me. You reveal so much to me. And then what remains afterwards is the nakuda of ani, the nakuda of self, the essential point, nakuda ha'ikarit, malchus de keser. And this is what's always taking place. This is the shorish of Nishmas Yisrael, the essential point of existence that enables HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal himself. And when a person believes with fundamental faith that even though they find themselves stuck in profound darkness and that God has hidden his face from them, but a person has to have Emunah, and they have to not give up hope on themselves, and they have to continue engaging in Torah and Avodah, and they have to continue hoping for redemption, and they have to continue waiting patiently for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal himself from within the concealment, and they place their hearts to understand and to know that within each and every level that they find themselves, they are not disconnected from God, but rather the presence of God rests in each and every place, literally, even within concealment. And we accomplish that which is said, I cry out to you from the depths of the abyss, which Rabbi Nachman said was his main thing. And we push ourselves to daven and we push ourselves to learn, even though we find ourselves in a profound state of smallness. Nevertheless, we don't stop doing our avodah. We continue to do what we can do. At that point, we reveal the depth of unity and we elevate the deepest level of desire from the depth and the pits of despair upwards towards the highest level. As long as we have our intentionality on HaKadosh Baruch Hu in truth, then our Malchus, then our Ani has the ability of burning all the way upwards with simple and true faith that every element of movement in this world, every thought, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. There's a yichud there. When I'm learning, when I'm davening, when I'm being mevatel myself, I have to have an emunah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there, and then I'm not doing anything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing everything, and a person has to continuously realize that the ani within themselves is just a kli of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that every other part of the self has to be mevatel itself. At that place, we reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by davening for other yidden, by drawing down the light and serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes, the reason it's so important is because without maintaining a sense of self, it would be all too natural for someone who tastes the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to run all the way up and deny existence, to run upwards and deny this world, to hide away in an attic somewhere, and not to be Ma'urivim Habrios, and not to draw the Torah all the way down. A person has to understand that we have to go down. We don't have to go down all the way, we don't have to fall terribly, but we have to have our hearts affixed on Shemayim, and we have to find a way of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu with our bodies and eating and drinking, when talking to people, when doing mitzvos maisios. We have to be me'uravim habrios with love. We have to speak to the world. We have to ensure that we draw down the light of Moichin down into this world. It's not good to be hidden away, as we learn from the Rebbe of Melech, says the Komarno. When he saw someone who spent their whole day in an attic, then he saw him and he said the pasuk, Im yasater ish b'mistarim v'ani lo yarenu. Person hides away all day thinking that the goal is to escape this world and to deny the self. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to look at a person like that. Yes, it's true, a person can fall into concealment and forgetfulness, but nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world for that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for us to find him down here, to reveal his light in each and every place, within the pain that feels like death. As the Komarno continues in Tes Zion, when a person finds themselves in a darkness and a concealment of all concealment and a sadness and a despondency, they have to know in their minds that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with them in that place, and the Alufa Shel Olam is there with them, and that there's no pain. It doesn't mean that the pain is negated. I realize that the pain is an expression of the Shekhinah itself, because I'm an expression of the Shekhinah itself. But what happens when God hides himself from even being hidden and I forget that he's hidden? The hastar shebetoich hastara. It's a pain that feels like death. It's a pain that feels worse than death. But in the end, we have to come to remember that there's no mitzias whatsoever, no small thought, nor small feeling that doesn't have the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu there. And we have to come back to the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us. And we have to refine our midos tovas, and we have to be mevatel ourselves in front of those who are bigger than us and those who are smaller than us. And realize that halavai, we should connect like the pachos shebepchusim, that we're the lowest of the low. And this is where we refine Malchus. This is where we're going to end with the Nesiv HaEmunah and Shvil HaShlishi, because we're going to go to the rest next week, Amir Hashem. But over here is where we take the self, and we refine it from all of its heaviness and all of its thickness, and we allow it to become the receptacle that becomes the tzimtzum for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that our heart, as Rabbi Nachman says, is the tzimtzum. That's the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being mitzamtzim himself. Listen to what the Komarno says in Osiyat Zayin. This is the secret of Tinu Oiz Le'elikim Yisrael Ga'avaso, that Klal Yisrael is the Gaiva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We remain, and the Balatanya also reveals this in Parak Lamed Vav, where he says that after the highest level of Kesser is revealed, what's going to remain is Nishmas Yisrael. Because Kavyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs and desires the strength and the help of Nishmas Yisrael through their actions. And when Malchus falls down as a result of all of the discrepancies in reality, when the need for Ani falls down, or when it desires to ascend upwards, when it desires to feel a sense of aggrandizement within itself, It can't go up. Malchus can't go up. We're still stuck in that ani. The only Eitzah is to learn to connect to those tzaddikim that take Malchus and bring it back to Bina. Because Malchus up to Bina is the whole space of the Ani de Kedusha. Bina is ani, Bina is effort, Bina is a sense of work, Bina is a sense of needing to put the effort in, and that is fundamental. If we're only in the Malchus of it, then we're stuck. We need tzaddikim to bring the Malchus back up to Bina, and through those tzaddikim, ayidehim ta'ala ha-Malchus at ha-Bina, Malchus goes up to Bina, and it's the zichuch of the ani, the kedusha, and in that place we become the Gadfin, the Shechina, we become like the body, so to speak, for the Shechina, and we ascend upwards to Bina. And this is the entire reason that we are still in exile and we're still stuck, because we haven't brought Malchus back up to Bina. Nobody's brought it back up to Bina yet. Because if there was truly somebody who could go up to Bina, so then they would take the Malchus back up to Bina. Why? Because they are the Malchus. All of us are the Malchus. And then the true Ziva would take place and Malchus would be refined, and it would be revealed the true level of Geula, of Malchus in this world. Again, we could all do this in our own lives, in each and every moment of the Geula HaPrati, but we're waiting for the tzaddik to carry it out. That tzaddik is Mashiach, and Mashiach is the sum total of all of the tzaddikim who precede him, especially Nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu, and all of those who put the effort in to draw Moshe Rabbeinu back into Eretz Yisrael. But now in Bichelis, it's not complete yet. And as a result of this, the end has been deferred and redemption has not yet come. And it's for this that most of the difficulty and the struggle of Klal Yisrael takes place, because Malchus has still not been brought up to Bina. We don't know how to deal with the fact that we are irreducibly a self, and that in the end of the day, it's about Eretz Yisrael Mamish. It's about Tzimtzum that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be revealed. Not undoing the Tzimtzum, first and foremost, refining the Tzimtzum. But nevertheless, there's still rectifications taking place every time that we sacrifice ourselves to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the concealment. And not to be worse, and to make a Kiddush Hashem in our hearts, to push ourselves, to ascend up to that place in Bina. That's the secret of Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. When Hashem becomes my God, my personal God, when I take my sense of self and I bring it up to Bina, that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself to me, till HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes my personal God, so to speak. That's when the Shechina is literally going to be rested on me, and that's when the Ani of me becomes a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in this world. That's when the soul of Nishmas Yisrael is at its full rectification. The secret of Tshuva that ascends all the way up to Bina. That through this I have the ability of bringing Malchus all the way back up to Bina. And when Malchus goes all the way back up to Bina, so we have a place where we have a unification where we can now begin to understand the role that we have in bringing the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. Where we remain, and this is in Osiyut Ches, where we remain a Malchus to Malchus. And even though the Malchus to Malchus is a place that the Klipos can come, nevertheless, we overcome darkness and the sadness and the despondency, and we overcome it, and we find joy, we find chesed, and we find the profound joy of what it means to be a Yid. In that place, all of the Marashchara goes away, and all of the difficult burdens go away, and we draw the light back down. Malchus ani bebina, and this is the secret of bringing the self back up to Bina. Shagam Bina hu ani v'nukva, because the source of the ani is Bina itself, and so we're just refining the Gans sense of ani, the sense of being the guf for the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. Because the difference is that Malchus gets stuck in Gvuros, but Bina represents Tzimtzum in its refinement, and therefore when we find ourselves stuck in the concealment of the self, we have to bring it all the way back up. In the secret of a Yerida L'tzarech Aliyah, to bring it back up to the source of the sense of self, which is Bina. Or in Soif Hameir Lehem Al Yedei Kaf Hamida Shel Bina. And then we can refine the self. Then we can bring Malchus back up to Bina. This is what we're trying to get to today. This is what the Heilige Komarno expresses throughout his Perush on Megillas Esther. But specifically, Megillas Esther is the celebration of the concealment and the descent of Malchus down to that place where it needs to be refined and it needs to be brought back up. And so listen to some of the Lashonos of the Ketem Oifir on this inyan. Just at the very beginning of the Megillah, that sometimes there's going to be a concealment of the concealment. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal himself in concealment. Esther min Torah minayin. Where does concealment come from in the Torah? And the pasuk is that I will surely hide myself. I heard from my teacher, says the Komarno, which was the Baal Shem Tov in his mind, and in his neshama, that if a person knows, if a person knows that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is hidden within the concealment, then it's not considered concealment, because if a person lives with the true faith that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is found within each and every movement of the self, then immediately all of the concealment is going to run away, and there's not going to be any experience that it's going to be devoid of the light of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Even in times of din, even in times of struggle, even a person who feels distant, they know that God is found there, immediately all of the dinim are redeemed. This is bringing Malchus back up to Bina. All of my selfhood, all of the complications, it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants there to be a tzimtzum in the Welt in order for him to be revealed. These are the 5 alphin of Amar Oyev Verdof Asika Chalek, the fact that in the depth of the concealment being chased by the Mitzrim, we remember that Alufa Shel Olam there. And because a person understands this by general, there's no concealment that stands between the person and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even when there are foreign thoughts that fall into a person's mind, which are the element of the lowest part, the Malchus Ta'asiyah, a person has to understand that they're just levushim v'kisuyim, they're in garments and protective devices over a precious stone that has to be protected by external garments that cover it over. And we have to let go of all of the concern and all the fear, and we have to stop feeling that we're stuck in a place of danger, and we have to connect ourselves to the secret of Eino Od Milvado. And then there's going to be times where even that concealment is concealed from us, and we don't even know that it's concealed. That's the Malchus of Malchus. And at that place, a person has to affirm within their minds the secret of Emunah, because there can be no difficulty without Emunah. There can be no ease without Emunah. There can be no difficulty with Emunah. Even in the place of shiftless, even in the place of complete smallness, I make unifications. In those strange places where there have been no tikkunim, I refine new tikkunim there. This is the whole inyan of Megillas Esther, revealing tikkunim in places that a person couldn't think that they could find tikkunim in. Everything is the derech of the oisios, says the Heilige Komarno. And we have to understand with the oisios that it's not that there's aleph and there's beis and there's gimel and there's dalid, but rather aleph expresses itself in 2 alephs and then 3 alephs and then 4 alephs. And in that way, we have the ability, or even a person like myself, says the Heilige Komarno, afilu kemoini min ois taf, even a person like me that comes from the letter of the ois taf, the last of the aleph beis, I have the ability of elevating all of the levels until taf. Why? Because ois taf is nothing but the iteration of the aleph hiding itself more and more. And the entire job of an individual in this world is to perform unifications from that low place of that fallen letter and to bring it all the way back to the place of the origination of the letters themselves, which is that place of Bina. To end with one nakuda that I want to bring out, and that's in this week's Parsha, to bring it into the Torah of this week's Parsha, this nakuda that we're trying to bring out of the role of the self in Avodas Hashem, it's going to be in Heichal Bracha, Parshas Tetzaveh. When a person is able to properly own the fact that we're oimid achor ba'achor, that we don't have the ability to have a face-to-face relationship with a Kadosh Baruch Hu yet, we own our human condition. So then at that point, the deficiency, which is that Zachar and Nekeva have only one back, it becomes almost a deep rectification. Because what we do is when we feel that we have that one element of a backside connecting Zachar and Nekeva, which is a sign of a chisaron, when we attach ourselves to the hidden light that is in that place, that it's a reference to a future unity where there in truth is only going to be unity, when we schlep that das out of concealment and bring it up to Geula, so then we come to a place, and listen to this lashon of the Komarno. What happens is, the Kailatakin Chet Shel Adam Arishon, person wants to come and rectify the Chet of Adam Arishon. Laha'alois hadas im kol haneshamos shetluyim bo el makom tsar hamakubatz mechuber yachtov sheyimteku v'yeiru zeh bazeh v'yitklalu zeh bazeh ki'ilu ein sham ela ketef echad kula yamina kula tov. A person wants to elevate themselves and anybody who is dependent upon themselves in any way imaginable, back up to that source of das, which goes all the way up to a place where it's as if there's absolutely no separation between Zachar and Nekeva. In that place, it's as if there's only chasadim, leis smoila b'hai atika, and we want to go up to that place because the das has fallen and it's separated and it's fragmented itself. It's fallen from the tippy top, and now we have to bring it all the way back up to echad yachid in the tachlis hagamor. Each person, this is our job, each person is engaged in this process of bringing all of the period of the self back up to a place where all of it is contained in a semblance of unity. Each and every person has the ability to choose this with their good choices, to have the ability to ascend upwards to the root of knowledge, which is the root of their soul in the supernal divine unity, that I should elevate my knowledge and my wisdom up to the heights. I should refine the Eitz Hadas Tovara. I should transform my katnas or with an ayin and the concealing vessels into a katnas or with an aleph, which are revealing vessels, just as Moshe Rabbeinu did. Vayar Reisheslo. This is what it means to elevate our das, our sense of self, to the place of Achdus, to the place of the Shar HaChamishim. And what's the Shar HaChamishim? It's Tachlis Yediyah Shalei Neda, the place where it becomes fundamentally clear that I don't know anything. I just know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the tzimtzum, and therefore I'm prepared to be a vessel for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal the tzimtzum. Va'ani lo yadati, I don't know myself. The ani is the deepest thing in the world. The person doesn't know anything about themselves. Person doesn't know anything. We also know ani kan hakol kan. Ani is the biggest mystery, as Rabbi Nassan said. That's the Shar HaChamishim, when I come to terms with the fact that I'm a kli for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then a person comes to a place of complete nullification and absolute nothingness. It's equal to the worm that's crawling on the floor. And at that point in a person's mind, they bring the entirety of Nishmas Yisrael to Kafschus. And judge each and every soul favorably and attach oneself to every spark of Nishmas Yisrael, because all we are is one big kli. To ascend upwards to the true source of all things, which is the Makor of Ayin, to that place of Bina, and then above to Chachma. Belev Emes u'belev Sameach, with a truthful heart and a joyous heart, Mupshat Bespashtus Agashmias, removed from the over-identification with the concealment of the self. To say there, we have to get to the end of the shir already. Time is getting late. And just to finish these words, person reaches up to the Shar Chamishim, Tachlas Yediyah Shalei Neda, and then they're Mavutal B'Metzias, and they reach absolute nothingness, and they're equal to everybody. At that place, that's the place of Mashiach Tzidkenu. That's the place of the Yechiel being the Skala. And this is the reason that David HaMelech had to stop being king, because a king can't go all the way down into the concealment. David HaMelech is the lowest dalit. It's the sense of self, and it's our job to elevate it back up to the true source of self, which is Bina, so that we can become the tzimtzum for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand the secret of Yesh, Reish Lamed Aleph, to be the shirish of Yesh, to be the shirish where HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in this world. And next week, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to go beyond Bina, back to the highest place of Malchus Agnuza Barad Love, going back into Chachma, back into Keser, which is going to complete the third yud of the name of the tzaddik, Rav Yitzchak, Eizik, Yehuda, Yechiel of Komarno, Be'ezras Hashem.